Good morning. Today I want to provide you with a survey of the Traveler universe, a setting that's been around since 1977 for role-playing games. Now, Traveler is a bit different than other role-playing games in that the default mode of play is usually focused around a group of characters that have their own starship and go around doing various kinds of work for hire, sometimes robberies, sometimes perfectly legitimate trading, privateering, maybe a little bit of espionage, covert, corporate, who knows? And it's always usually on the frontier of society. It's at that place where the big built-up cities, the floating skyscrapers, the mega structures and arcologies are but a distant memory. And Soylent Green is often on the menu, but at least you don't have to punch your government ration card for it. Instead, you are a maverick at liberty to try and keep your ramshackle starship going. So that means that a lot of the geography, a lot of the entities that you're going to bump into really are things that matter and are part of the larger scale. And that means that since you're on the frontier, a lot of the frictions between the various forces and Traveler are going to come into play. I'm going to save an introduction to the 6 major alien races of Traveler for another video. And today, I just like to kind of sketch out the gross scale of it and show you where the various traditional settings and best places to begin play are. So let's start. I'm the Complex Games Apologist. Now, a bibliographic note. I came along in the latter day of the Traveler universe, sometime around 1996, and I was very fortunate to have my own introduction through a pretty panoptic survey of the Traveler universe in the person of Steve Jackson Games' own release of the Traveler universe. Now, GURPS is not really my jams now as a game master, and I think that there are a lot of generic systems, and then there's the many editions of Traveler, Mongoose and Mark Miller's own official editions that you could choose to play in the universe with. But you may have already noticed that my videos are more focused on the details of the setting and how they really inform play. So, let's turn the camera around and let's have a look at the map, shall we? So if you take a look at this map, you'll see that the Traveler universe is our universe. This is the Milky Way galaxy. And this little red splotch that we're going to begin zooming towards, called charted space, is where all the canon of Traveler abides. At the center of this area is the Third Imperium, a sort of blended culture of the humans that have lived among the stars for many millennia, and it's sort of an interstellar polity that resembles a lot of the cultural norms of our own present day. I've talked about how Traveler and its Traveler universe are sort of an alternate present that you can step through, and there's many similarities between our own life here on Earth and the life of the people that you're going to begin to play that are residents of the Third Imperium. The Third Imperium is not what you think it is in terms of an empire like in Star Wars. Instead, it's a big federal state with lots of individual worlds with their own governments. But your character has decided to strike out to the frontier and is often looking to either make a name for himself, strike it rich, or just sort of get by and hide from a dark past. There are 2 traditional areas on this map that are most developed and are sources for inspiration for game masters and from which you can draw a lot of content for your game. The Spinward Marches, which is out here on the frontier a year away from the capital of the Empire. These are 30 parsec sectors across, and 30 parsecs is roughly about 1 month of travel at the fastest speeds possible. So this means that your characters are likely also born in these frontier regions or have been working for a long time out here on the fringe. This also means that the big weight of the really gigantic starships that are carrying literally millions of tons of goods and could outcompete your tiny freighter that the party has, well, it's likely that the party ship is right-sized to the occasion. And in fact, the small cargo hold in a Beowulf Free Trader or in an Empress Marava, or even the little trunk in the back of a Type S, could be just what an individual world and a client needs to get a job done. The other traditional area for play is the Solomani Rim sector. This is where humans came into contact with the Villani, the other major polity of interstellar humans that had developed jump drive for themselves. And thousands of years ago, a lot of very big wars were fought between humans from Earth and humans from elsewhere. And the legacy of that is that people still remember those differences. And lately, in the more or less present day that most campaigns of Traveller abide in and most content you'll read will rest upon, it's come to be that there's sort of a nationalist fervor taking over this region that's identifying human traditions and human cultures from Earth as superior. And this is called the Solomani movement. It's sort of a little bit fascist, but the point is that it's a political movement that goes out of its way and thinks that government should go out of its way to preserve the earthiness of humans. Now, of course, just because your character identifies with Earth as his heritage doesn't mean he's a member of this kind of fascist Solomani movement. It could just mean that he has a library of books or a stack of records from old Earth, that he plays something that looks like a guitar. Because after all, there's been thousands of years and many cultural trends that have swept by. So you're going out of your way and doing something special if you're choosing to be an Earther. And that's not the name that, of course, Traveller uses. It's Solomani, for Sol, the star that we are from. And I think this is a great transition to start talking about the other major race from Earth. And this is touching upon the great and strange mysteries of Traveller. The Vargr are a soup of Terran canines, among other things. Sometime, hundreds of thousands of years in the past, somebody decided to take wolves and other pieces of genetic material from Earth and tinker with them and put together a very interesting combination called the Vargr. They are very focused on charisma and on social interactions, and a lot of their achievements are specifically because a charismatic individual can hold a group together. At the same time, something of that relationship that we as humans have with dogs is preserved. Man's best friend literally is something that allows the Vargr and the humans to live side by side. Now, the Vargr believe not so much in government as they do in relationships and respect and in loyalties. Patronage is the word that we use for that here on Earth. And this often leads to Vargr taking on the role of pirates when they see play at your tabletop or when they're NPCs. But again, this is something to talk about in greater detail in its own series of videos if you're interested in. Suffice it to say, the Vargr are a major part of what makes the Spinward Marches a great place to play, because there's a lot of them around, and if you're interested in having a variety of races on your player character's starship, then this is a great place to begin. In contrast, the Solomani Rim is, for many parsecs in a radius around it, a place of human space. There are some interesting minor races, including the Vegans, a contemplative and sort of interestingly calm at heart desert-dwelling race that lives very near to Earth and has a long history of sour relationships with the other human major race, the Villani. And for the time being, they've earned their own place as an autonomous region in the Empire. So, if you're interested in sort of playing a three-tentacle-handed, spindly, skinny, tall, one-eyed, thick-skinned, desert-dwelling lizard that doesn't seem to have much of a mouth besides an opening in his chest, well then, a vegan might be something interesting to you. And that opens the door to talking about how the aliens of the Traveller universe are alien. There are big differences between them and us, both in their biology and their ecology, and the reasons that they were moved to become technological civilizations. And this brings us to the next major race, and the next check upon the Third Imperium's expansion. The Aslan. Now, the Aslan are visually similar to lions, and they do have their origins as predators in something like an arid plain, what we would call savanna here on Earth. And the reasons that they ascended into a territorial civilization that's out among the stars, well, that's because they're very interested in territory. And if you can achieve your own territory as a male Aslan and live to tell the tale because you didn't have to kill to get there, then that's a good thing. And at the same time as that, much like lions, the females of the Aslan hunt. And that's translated into enterprise and commercial endeavors as well. And there's a lot to say about how there's a code of honor among the Aslan, and there are ways of doing things, and that if you honor them, then you won't get into fights. And getting into fights and having to kill each other with very lethal claws is something that the Aslan do not eagerly undertake, and yet find themselves called and obliged to by their long heritage. And this way of life, this honor that they cultivate, is called eventurally. Now, the interesting thing is that the Aslan came to Jump Drive late, and as they clashed against humans during a period where there was no empire, and there was only sort of a lot of chaos, a lot of humans actually came to live alongside the Aslan, and they lived by their code. And around here, and this is in fact the Aslan homeworld here in Dark Nebula sector, well, there's a lot of humans not so far away. And by the same token, Aslan who could find territory or decided to give up the ways of honor found themselves residents of the modern-day empire. And so it is that there's another often played player character race. You can choose to live by these ways of honor and observe these rules of dueling and the really tight sexual norms about how male Aslan are attuned to conflict and honor and perhaps making nice umbrellas and embroidering kimonos, and how female Aslan are enterprising and commercially minded and definitely are not allowed to own land. You can go that way. You could also be an Aslan that has abandoned the ways of eventurally and lives kind of alongside humans and in human culture, and just happens to have some sharp claws. Of course, anytime that he bumps into his more honorable kindred, there's going to be some friction, and so that choice will still matter in play. Any survey of the Traveler universe should also make note of the Jodani Consulate. This is another human polity. It's another place where humans among the stars develop Jump Drive and set out. These people are very careful. They made a big mistake very early on in their life, and they also happen to master psychic disciplines very early on as they set out among the stars. And their government is very preoccupied with making sure that people are happy in their mind as well. And so there's an organization which is described as a specter, at least in the Third Imperium, something to be very afraid of, and a reason that you don't want to live in the Jodani Consulate, and that is the Varchettel, the Thought Police. Yes, that's right, there are telepaths that drive down the road in their grav car, and they listen for anyone who's having a tough day, who may have had a fight with their wife, or is having trouble with their weight or their body image, and they report you and they bring you in for counseling. Now, you are happy to receive that help, and it's an entirely different way of life that humans who might have psychic powers might embrace. But it is a fundamental offense to liberty, at least for those of us who live according to the mores of Earth. And those mores of Earth have spread themselves far and wide, because it's thousands of years since humans from Earth kind of spread out. Now, let's talk about the gaps, the spaces between. The Great Rift is a vastness. It's a place where you will suffer to refuel your starship, and there are very few places where it can be crossed. And this means that the Spinward Marches is commercially isolated from the rest of the empire. What's going on in terms of trade is something that is much more interested in taking advantage of the opportunities inside of the domain of Deneb, possibly getting a hold of interesting handicrafts or technologies that the Vargr cook up in their own state, and possibly trying to snag the alliance of these client states so that the Zhodani do not. Now that's the gross political level. Let's talk for real about what the scale of a Traveler game would be. This right here is Glisten Sub-Sector. It's a common starting point. This little asteroid world, a collection of space stations scattered around a very mineral-rich star, is a jumping off point into District 268. These worlds are all connected, 1 parsec apart from each other, which means that even the crudest of faster-than-light drives can keep them in communication. In fact, the Spinward Marches has something called the Spinward Main that allows one of the cheaper and sort of low-down starships that are common to adventuring parties, the Beowulf, to make its way almost all the way across the Spinward Marches. These worlds are developing. They've been leased to megacorporations. They are often hostile to human life in one way or another. They may not have delicious atmospheres to breathe, and they are places that your party is going to find opportunities. There's going to be a lot of interesting friction with the kind of new planetary governments and colonists. It could be places where minor races, aliens that have yet to be understood, are abiding. And it's also a place where the Zhodani might be trying to get their fingers into things. And it's not far away from a few other things that I think are really worth noting. The Darians, who are an enigmatic polity, a minor human race that achieved the highest level of technology that has ever been seen. And then they almost made their own sun go supernova. And in the Stone Age that followed from the massive EMP that they dosed themselves with, their outlook on life and their outlook on why they do things changed. They are, of course, another alien race that deserves a long explanation, and I will try and give you one in a future video. District 268 is also near the Sword Worlds. These are a group of nationalist folks from Earth that sought to rekindle the old Scandinavian identity. It's difficult for me to not describe them in a way that echoes Aryan nationalism. But I think there's more to it, and it's something that entire books have been written about, and there is a good one out there about the Sword Worlders. Now, there's a whole other third region of the Traveler map that I think is worth considering for setting your campaign in, but I'm only going to touch on it briefly because it's more of a GM's preserve. It's a place where you can draw more of the lines on the map and come up with your own worlds and your own governments and adventure hooks outside of the constraints of the setting of the Third Imperium. If you like jump drive, if you like the alien races, this is an area for you. I'm talking about the trailing frontier of the Imperium, places like Ley Sector and the Glimmerdrift Reaches, in the Julian Protectorate to Corward. These are also places where you'll have the intriguing prospect of encountering the enigmatic hivers, who speak to you in a very friendly voice through their chest computers, keep some things close to their chest, and have some very advanced technology, especially when it comes to holographic entertainment. It's also a place where you might encounter the specter of the Kukri, militant vegetarians, yeah, these guys right here, who find the prospect of anything that might eat another living being more than terrifying. So terrifying that they're willing to exterminate those who make other dietary choices. And so it is that there's this less constrained and more open-ended region where you could develop your campaign in, a place where you could easily set out in a ship of the Interstellar Scout Service or the Imperial Navy on a survey or a diplomatic mission, or where the party could be less than friendly to law enforcement. If you're interested in space pirates, this could be a cool place to play. But I'll leave that for you to engage your creative juices upon. And in the meantime, Explore the Third Imperium for yourself. Find the many places in the internet where folks have developed the canon or created their own Traveler universes. This is, after all, an entire galaxy for you to explore. I'm the Complex Games Apologist.
Thank you for checking out my channel. If you enjoyed what you've seen here, maybe check out one of my in-depth video essays on topics in the tabletop gaming world, or subscribe with alerts so that you get updated anytime I put up new content here on YouTube. And above all, let me know what you think about this topic and about my videos in general by leaving a like or a dislike, and especially your own opinions in the comments below.